Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Keller, and today I'll be talking about the Heartbleed bug and buffer overflow attacks. So let's start by talking about Heartbleed. Heartbleed was a bug that was disclosed in 2014, but may have been prevalent all the way back till 2012, and was around for quite a few years and may still be in existence to a certain extent. It was because the OpenSSL library for online communication had a major security flaw in it that was able to be exploited fairly simply. At the time, this was a major development because quite a few devices and websites were using the OpenSSL library. Some publications had the number of devices well over 1 billion, and the number of affected websites may have been as many as 800,000 or more. And that number decreased gradually over time. This was not patched out immediately because of the time it took to roll out those patches to the vulnerable systems. So what was it? TLS and SSL have a built-in method to keep connections alive called a heartbeat. This is to allow long-running communication on a network. This heartbeat is crafted as pictured below with a type specifying a heartbeat. The payload, which can be really anything, some padding attached in there. And most importantly for this exploit was the length, which is how the exploit was done. Based on some reading, I have included some pretty simple pseudocode showing how, this is vastly simplified, but this is essentially how it would work, is you would simply specify a much larger payload size than you had actually gone. So in here you can see I'm simply requesting a heartbeat, nothing important in there, just to go, some back and forth, and then sending a request. However, I've specified that the size of this request is 10,000 bytes as opposed to, say, 10. And the vulnerability is because of the length specified there. The attacker would ask for a much larger length of data than what they had actually passed. And the idea behind this heartbeat was to have the sender would send something simple, and the receiver would copy that message and send it back to them in a response to show that they had an alive connection. However, when that was copied, it also copied the payload length. And when the responding machine would fill the response back, it would try to fill that length entirely. And it would do this by using objects and items that were in the adjacent memory to where that was stored. And this could include sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card information, and user information. One of the scariest parts of this attack, along with how simple it is to implement, was that it could be kept alive, and the servers could essentially be drained of memory as the server responded over and over again with whatever they had to try to fill those packets. As a security flaw, this one's pretty major, but it's also not something that you would necessarily think of when writing the code to implement it. It's simply thinking that you're just making a request and responding with it. However, the vulnerability is pretty significant, which leads into talking about buffer overflow attacks. So these attacks are probably, I'd say, much worse than the previous one, and they rely on manipulating how code executes and attempting to hijack or deviate the currently running code. Buffer overflow is still a problem. This is not something that went away like the last one. And given the breadth of different systems that are used, different coding languages, different kinds of devices, it will probably not be going away anytime soon, even as security advances in trying to solve this. So how does this one work? So buffer overflow is caused when an input is larger than the memory location it's destined for. So as you can see from this image, they were only expecting those first 8 bytes but 14 were given. Usually the code crashes in this case. However, a buffer overflow attack takes the step between when that crash happens and when the overflow happens to hijack the running code. So how is that done? Is when the overflow occurs, it's possible to redirect where the next operation in memory should happen simply by passing that location in the malicious code. You do need to know where the first step in memory was taken, and this requires knowing quite a bit about how the stack works and how the code works. However, it is possible to guess this information, and it's possible to predict it. There's a pretty significant lab in the textbook that goes into all of this. I've noted here, it is very cool. Everybody should go try it. One of the biggest issues with these, as we saw from the last lab, was that when you hijack a running program like this, you not only take over what was running, but also the root permissions, or not the root permissions, apologies. You can take over the same permissions as whatever program is running, which if it was root access, then you have complete access to the system. An interesting way of doing this, as outlined in the textbook, was simply by redirecting where in memory the next step is going to be, and then passing it no action over and over and over again until you can get to a much larger block of malicious code to run. And it's possible to get this code in there simply by passing a file that is too large to run, or a string that's much too large for the code to execute properly. And these buffer overflow attacks usually only occur where user input happens, but they don't necessarily need to. In certain cases, it's possible to attack pretty much anything running as long as you know enough about the memory. So, thank you. In conclusion, these are both very cool things to study. Fairly scary knowing that these kind of exploits happen and that bad actors are looking for them all the time. However, I do encourage everyone to go look at the labs which are in the textbook and try them out, because they cover them pretty extensively. So thank you. And here are the sources for the images as well as the documentation from that.